All right, guys, let's do this. So we are going to come to the mat. I'm going to lay down, curl back, nice neutral spine, little gap between the small of the back and the floor. Drop those drop the rib cage down and in, pull those upper abdominal muscles in, feel that kind of cinching and drawing to your center as best you can. And we're going to float that right foot just up off of the floor. Feel the weight in both hips from side to side. Kind of tune into that even pressure in both hips. And then we're going to reach that right leg out nice and long. And then slow as you glide the heel back towards the hip. And then we reach and lengthen out again. I've got my hands on my hips because I want to be able to feel if I'm using my back and I'm twisting or creating any lateral flexion to make it feel like or look like that I got more range with this right leg. So I'm actively engaging those right obliques as I send that right leg forward. I want to make sure the left side of my torso doesn't crunch and compress to allow my pelvis, my hip bones to stay level and evenly balanced with my rib cage and with my shoulders. One more with that right leg, and then we'll bend the knee, place the foot flat, take a moment to reset, and then we're going to float the left foot just up off of the mat, and we'll lengthen and extend that leg out, reaching it out nice and long, and draw the heel back towards the hip, and we'll press and lengthen, stretching it out. Again, left obliques are helping to maintain that connection between the hip and the rib cage, so you're symmetrical from side to side. The neck is long, the collarbone is spreading wide, allowing the shoulders to glide away from the neck, away from your ears, so there's no shrug as you're laying on your mat. Last one with that left leg, reaching out nice and long. And then we'll bend the knee, bring the heel back, rest it right in line with the sit bones. Right leg extends straight out, reaching that right leg out nice and long. I've got some pressure in my left foot. I want to feel the back of my leg active. Not like I'm bracing or gripping, but that I've got some good tension to help me connect to my pelvic floor, my lower, middle, and upper abdominal segments of that abdominal wall. And this right leg is just holding out nice and straight, nice and long. We're in that great isometric hold, that extension of the leg reaching out of the hip, feeling the engagement of all of the muscles up and down that leg. Holding for another 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We'll bend that right knee, bring the foot back in line with the sit bone, and we'll transition to the left side. Left leg extends out, reaching out nice and long. I'm going to tune into what's going on in the hips, in the chest, and the shoulders, finding that symmetry, shoulders, ribs, hip bones, as I straighten and lengthen that left leg straighter and longer. Feeling the tension building in the leg from the hip out through the foot. Holding for another 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Bending the knee, drawing the heel back towards the hip, resting the feet there on the mat. Fingers are going to interlace. We'll bring our hands behind our head, move into a chest lift. Shoulders glide down, rest the head back in your hands, and exhale to fold at the mid-ribs to lift the chest up, and we'll pause for a breath before slowly resetting back to the floor, back to the mat. And exhale, folding deep at the mid-ribs, just there at the bra line, letting the head rest back into your hands. Slight little tuck of the chin down. We don't want the head and the neck jutting forward. Trying to peel the shoulder blades up off of the floor. As we're in this nice big chest lift, we want to make sure that we stay anchored towards the tailbone. So we maintain that little gap at the small of the back. We're not creating movement in our lumbar spine as we work the chest lift. Last two. And slow to reset back to the mat. Arms come nice and long down by your side. We'll bring that right leg up to tabletop, holding that nice strong tabletop position. And we're going to extend the leg forward. Reach it out nice and long, stretch it forward out over the mat, and then draw it back. Imagine the foot and the heel are horizontal on a track, gliding forward. So the leg is not lowering towards the floor or lifting up towards the ceiling. So if I'm in tabletop and my foot is, say, 2 feet above the mat, when I press forward and I straighten the leg, my foot should still be about 2 feet above the mat. Drawing in through the abdominals, bracing through the back extensors, through the back, up the spine. So you're using both the muscles at the back of your core and front of your core to help stabilize your body as that right leg glides. Right foot rests to the mat, and we're going to bring our left leg up to tabletop. Feel the weight between the hips and the shoulders evenly pressed against the floor, and we reach and extend that left leg out. Finding the full extension of the knee before bending and bringing the leg back. And that same forward glide of the foot. Trying not to let the foot lower towards the floor or lift up towards the ceiling, unless you're purposely modifying the movement. Maybe your hamstrings are really tight, it's hard to get that extension, or there's some stuff going on in your low back, and going up towards the ceiling is more comfortable on the hip flexor, on the lumbar spine. Finding that nice reach, that nice glide with the leg. Again, there's some light pressure on that right foot to the back of the leg, can engage. And we'll bring the left leg back, rest the foot to the mat. Realign your torso and the hips. We'll bring the right leg up to tabletop. Extend that right leg out, and we're going to hold. So we're going to bring in a bunch of isometric holds in the session today. Reaching that leg out nice and long. Holding for another 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bending that right knee, placing the foot back to the mat. We switch to the left side. And we extend and reach that left leg forward. Full extension of the leg, reaching out of the hip through to the foot. Weighting the pelvis evenly, the chest, the shoulders, the rib cage, everything's active. We hold for another 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Bending the knee, placing the foot back to the mat. Arms reach straight up towards the ceiling. We're back into our chest lift, so we're going to be moving back and forth between lower extremities and upper extremities. We'll press on the exhale to lift the head, neck, and chest. Pause for that breath at the top, and then slow to reset back to the mat. Keeping the arms locked out nice and straight. Finding that deep fold there at the mid-ribs as you press and lift. As you're lowering the arms are only lowering to parallel to your mat. So hands and arms are floating off of the floor. They're not touching the ground. One more. And we'll slow to lower. Fingers will interlace. We'll bring our hands behind the head to support the head and neck. And on the next exhale, we fold deep at the mid-ribs to lift the chest, slide those shoulders down the back with the head press back, rest back into your hands. And we're going to bring our legs to tabletop. Holding strong here in tabletop, that nice deep fold at the mid-ribs. 90-degree bend at the hip and at the knee. As we squeeze through inner thighs, we tighten up through the rib cage, pull to our center line. Holding strong here. Extend both legs out. Hold. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bending the knees, placing the feet back to the mat, and slow to reset the upper body to the floor. Arms come down nice and long by your side, and we're going to tilt the hips back into a little pelvic tilt. Draw our belly to our back, curl the hips back. In order to lift the tailbone up, the pelvis has to tilt back. Unless you're avoiding flexion, it would be the only time that you would simply just float the hips up to bring the tailbone off. We want to really focus on opening and stretching, creating space in those facets through the lumbar spine. Create that opening and that stretching along those muscles on either side of the low back. Drawing the abdominals in, we're creating that tension in the abdominals, that contraction, so those low back muscles can release. And then we rock back towards the tailbone, towards the sit bones. And exhale, tilt the hips. Drawing your belly to your back. It's not just about kind of sucking up and in. We want to create that tension, that intensity in the abdominal wall as if you're bracing, you're trying to prevent something from sinking in, like if you were resting a heavy weight on your belly. And rock back towards the tailbone. One more. Pelvic tilt. And slow to reset back towards the tailbone. We're going to go into our pelvic curl. Arms are reaching down nice and long by your side. And on the exhale, we're going to tilt the hips back and we're going to peel and bridge, lifting up. Pressing the hips up towards the ceiling, which you can do with or without the articulation. And on that next breath, we drop down along the mid-ribs. We roll along the spine, along the low back, and we curl down back towards the tailbone. without the ribs flaring, without the shoulders, elevating up towards the neck, towards the ears. We curl back up and we reach the hips towards the ceiling as you press the knees forward towards the toes and curling and rolling back down piece by piece. Taking the time as you curl up and curl down. Taking your time through those articulations so you can pause in areas where you feel more tightness, more restriction, less mobility. Slowing down your movements so you can bring your attention to the balance between the right side and the left side of your body. Looking for areas where you're shifting to the side or twisting. Nice and smooth as you're rolling along the back. Last one. Legs come to tabletop position. We hold strong here with some space between the legs at even spacing. And we're going to work into our leg changes. We're going to hinge at the hip to lower the right foot. And then alternate from side to side. Very slow work. Think of that nice slow tempo. 3 to 5 seconds for the movement. 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3. You could slow it down even more to 5. Or play around with the cadence. Do a couple for 3-second cadence, then bump it up to 5. Slow it down more. Changing and varying the speed, the pace at which you're moving to get the muscles to activate and engage, get your brain engaged, to focus on the movement, your stability. Working slower with more focus, more attention to those small details that we lose when we add speed. One more each side. And we'll rest the feet back to the mat. Bring the legs together, the feet together. I'm going to walk them a little closer to the tailbone. And we're going to open and stretch, adding some rotation. We'll tip the legs over and onto that right hip, picking up the whole left side of the lower torso, the hip, the leg, the foot, to keep the legs stacked. And then we're going to squeeze through knees, through inner thighs, and we come back to center. And we'll tip and twist up and over onto that left hip, lifting the right hip, the right foot and leg. And we're going to press the right shoulder down and back. And through back to center. One more stretch, one more rotation each side. Feel that rotation, that stretch through the mid-ribs, right there at the brow line, weighting the chest, the shoulder blades flat against your mat. come back to center. Legs come to tabletop position. And on our inhale, both legs are going to straighten forward. And exhale to draw them back. Finding that alignment of the legs as they extend forward. We are not working with a chest lift at the moment, so you could work higher towards the ceiling, which will put less torque in the pelvis, less pressure on the low back. Inhale as those legs reach and straighten, and exhale as you bring them back. Last two. On the last one, we'll reach out, we'll hold. And ankles, legs will crisscross, right over left, left over right. Reaching the legs out. You don't need to bend the knee to cross the legs. And 3, 2, and 1. Knees bend in towards the chest. You can round the low back. And stretch. Collarbone spreads wide, the chest opens. Grabbing the back of the thighs, add a chest lift. We're going to curl and roll up into that teaser prep hold position. Floating up, balancing on the tailbone, on your sit bones. Flat, long back. Lengthening the spine. And we're going to hold. Hands off the legs. We hold for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Feet drop to the mat into butterfly pose. Drop the knees out to the side. You can even press the legs down against the floor. Nice deep breath in. Exhale out. One more breath. And we'll curl up. And we'll restack. Unwind the legs. I'm going to rest back on the forearms. Nice proud chest. Open and expand through the chest, through the collarbone. And the legs are going to tip and twist over and onto that right side. And back to center. Try to move from the mid-ribs. So the chest is staying squared off with your mat. As you rotate. Pressing the chest up, feeling that stretch around the front of the shoulder. One more to the left. And hips tilt back. We'll slide the arms forward. We'll curl and roll down to the floor. Walking our heels, our feet back towards our sit bones. And we're going to interlace our fingers, bring our hands behind the head, supporting the head and the neck. And on the exhale, we'll fold at the mid-ribs. We'll come up into our chest lift. We'll hold here. Slide the shoulders down. Nice deep belly breaths. And on your next exhale, you're going to twist over and onto that right shoulder blade and pause. Taking a breath. Next breath, we come to center and pause, sliding the shoulders down. Head rests back into the hands and exhale, tip, twist, over and onto that left shoulder blade. Take a breath or two. And back to center. And pausing again. Let's pause in each part of the transition for at least 2 breaths. Letting your head fall back into your hands. Keep the weight at your tailbone, at your sit bones. Nice smooth glide from side to side. Finding that pause in the movement to adjust your position. Dial it in a little bit more. Coming back to center and slow to reset to the mat. Arms come out to a T position, palms up towards the ceiling. And we'll bring our legs to tabletop. I'm going to cross my right ankle over my left. Hug in through the knees, the inner thighs a bit more. On the inhale, legs tip, twist, coming from the mid-ribs as we move over to the right. And exhale to come back to center. Tip and twist to the left. Pause. And back to center. Arms are reaching straighter and longer as the legs move. The hips move from side to side. We're trying to keep that movement there at the mid-ribs, just below the pecs, below the shoulder blades, across the mid-ribs. Pausing at center, I'll change the ankle cross, left over right. Take a moment to reset, and we tip and twist over to that right side, and exhale back to center. Moving through the mid-ribs, keeping the shoulder blades weighted against the floor, against your mat. One more each side. And we'll uncross the legs, drop the feet, take a moment to reset the back and the torso. Arms come down by the side of the hips. Then we'll bring our legs back to tabletop, lifting the head, neck, and chest. We'll rest the hands at the knees. And reach the right leg out, nice and straight, nice and long. That right leg lowers and lifts. Hands are resting on that left tabletop leg. You got that nice deep fold at the mid-ribs as the right leg lifts and lowers. Finding that extension of the right leg, that nice strong line. And we'll switch. Chest drops back to the mat. We take a moment to reset. And then fold and lift. Head, neck, and chest. Left leg moves forward. Hands are resting there at that right knee. And we lower and lift. Reaching that left leg out nice and long, nice and strong. Deep, deep fold at the mid-ribs. Keep the weight in the hips. One more. And we'll draw the knees back to tabletop. Hug the legs in towards the chest. We'll stretch that right leg out nice and long across the mat as you hug that left knee in. And then we're going to take that left leg, cross-body, over to that right shoulder. And slow to unwind. Bringing the right knee to the chest, the left leg extends out. And right leg crosses the center line over towards that left shoulder. And slow to unwind. Legs are reaching straight out nice and long on your mat. Arms come up towards the ceiling. And on the inhale, the arms lower so we can begin to lift the head, neck, and chest. Find that deep fold at the mid-ribs. And then exhale to curl and rolling up. Stretching out nice and long out over the legs. And curl back. Slide the shoulders down. Tilt the hips back. Try to feel that movement up the spine piece by piece. Legs have to stay strong and straight to help with the roll up. Rolling out over the thighs for that added stretch before rolling back down to the mat. Last one. And we'll finish this last roll up in our seated position, sitting upright. Round and roll, stretch forward, reach out over the legs. And next breath, we'll curl up and we'll restack the back, sitting up nice and tall. We're going to hinge back, rest back on the forearms. Chest is lifted as you roll those shoulders back and down. And on the exhale, the right leg is going to lift and lower. Nice and straight, nice and long. Extending that right leg out, keeping that length in the spine, that stretch through the chest and around the shoulders. And right leg drops back to the mat, still active and engaged. Take a moment to reset your upper body, and then exhale, left leg lifts, and inhale to lower. Last two. And pushing up and rounding and stretching forward out over the legs. Flex at the ankles, reach for the toes if you can. Walk the hips out so the hips are not tucked under. And we reach for the feet. press the back of the knees down. We're stretching along the whole posterior chain, up the back of the legs, along the spine. One more breath. And we'll sit up nice and tall. Let's flip over, face down for back extension and some hip extension work. So we'll start with our forehead resting on our hands, which are up in front of us. Stack the hands. Legs are going to have some separation. And we're going to really draw those shoulders down the back, slight tuck of the tailbone as you brace and pull in through the rib cage. Belly and back are active. Right leg only is going to lift, and we're going to hold for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Slow to lower that right leg, and we switch it up and over to the left side, extending and lifting, holding for 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. We're gonna alternate these short holds, about 5 seconds each leg. While you're in that hold, counting down the seconds, you're focusing on that balance between the right and left side of your body, the engagement of your core, your back extensors. As the leg is lifting, the pelvis is staying evenly weighted down against the mat. The leg is stretching out of the hip, reaching out nice and long over the mat. And again, each leg extension hold is for about 5 seconds. Nice and slow countdown. You're counting down for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's do 2 more each leg as you knit the rib cage in. Draw your belly to your back. Extend and lengthen that leg as it lifts up. Keeping the movement, that extension in the hip so it doesn't travel up into the lumbar spine, into your low back. 1 more. And hands come along the side of the body with straight arms, reaching towards the knees, towards the feet, and we'll lift head, neck, and chest. Floating the chest up off the mat, tucking the tailbone, tightening in through the glutes, through the abdominals, back extensors. Slide those shoulders down and back. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Slow to lower down. Take a breath for the reset and inhale to lift. Going down the checklist from crown of the head all the way down the body through to the tips of the toes, finding that full body engagement as you're holding and lifting, squeezing through glutes, through abdominals, using those back extensor muscles to hold that extension. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Slow to lower. A breath for the reset. And inhale, we lift. Arms are reaching straighter and longer. So are the legs. Keeping that tension in the body. Feel your triceps fire as you reach the arms straighter and longer, pressing into the rib cage. Holding for 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Slow to lower with control. Back to the mat. Hands come in front of the face so your forehead can rest on stacked hands. And we'll reset the upper body. We're going to go into our double leg hip extension. On the inhale, both legs lift and hold for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Slow to lower. Every time we lift, we try to straighten the legs more, knitting in through the rib cage, through the abdominals, engaging the muscles in the back. We want to let that extension come from the hip, active glutes. You're in control of that count. Maybe it needs to be 3 seconds. Maybe 5 seconds is too long. Or you need a little extra time. Make it 6 or 7 seconds for that hold. One more. And slow to lower the legs down. Hands come by the chest. We're going to peel up. Sit our hips back towards the heels into our child's pose. Reaching the arms out nice and long. And on that next breath, tailbone tucks, spine rounds. We curl up and we restack. See if I can clear the push-through bar. Sitting up nice and tall, nice and long. All right, guys. Awesome work today. Thank you so much.